Welcome into another edition of Silver Linings Podcast. I am Adam, and across from me is Uncle Rex. Um, you know, before we go down all these roads that we're going to go on in this podcast, I do want to say that I'm super excited about being an optimist, being part of this group. I did receive a T-shirt that I'm wearing today, Rex. Let me move the microphone out.
Okay.
It says, pickleball is my favorite season of the year. Forget spring, forget summer, winter, and fall. It's pickleball. So our optimists have been so great to us, to Rex and I, and we just want to thank you. 2023 was an amazing year for us as Rex and I wrote a book and started a podcast to, start our healing process. And this has really turned into something that, like we've said this a million times, that we didn't expect what's happened with what's going on with you guys, the optimists and the podcast community that is listening all over the world. And first of all, we wanted gratitude, say thank you so much for giving us a chance to heal while we've been on here. And it's been amazing watching some of you heal on this podcast as well. So a lot of good things. And as we reflect on 2023, Rex and I said we started this podcast to talk about our family tragedy. And there are so many different things out there that people were saying that I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many things that aren't true or what people have a perspective of that I just wanted to get out to let people know this is really what's happened or this is what's going on. And I feel like I got a chance to do that. And in the process of doing that, I have healed a lot. What about you, Rex?
And it's just been tremendous. I think a lot of my progress toward healing just came from all the acceptance, the love, the outpouring of love of all of the optimists. Came from the experience being able to talk about it. Just so many different manifestations of love, things I didn't expect, and support through those things. So it has been tremendous. Thank you to all of you.
And as Rex and I did 10 podcasts to talk about our family tragedy and try to hit everything that we knew what to hit and just talk about those things, it's evolved. And so now it's, become its own thing. And but with that, I started reflecting on 2023. And I do this at the beginning of every year. I start reflecting on what in 2023 did I learn? Because I'm all about learning and growing. I try to put myself in rooms with people who are much smarter and have much more knowledge than I do, and just try to be a sponge and listen to what they have to say and learn and look things up myself and all those things. And Rex has been part of that for me as well. And so some of the podcasts that we have done, I've learned a few things from some of the comments that people have made. I've learned some things from what Rex has taught some of us. And I've learned just in general, some things that really touched me. Like one of the things Rex and I came on here, and the first few weeks were a little rough and choppy with, us taking some shots from people, trolls, I guess, if you'll call them that. I have no idea. But with that, I've learned, and we even did a whole podcast on this, how not to judge people, because humans are we just judge things automatically. And to learn how to step back and not judge somebody because I don't know what shoes they walked in. And so that was a huge one for me in 2023 that I started learning about, judging a book by its cover or judging people with things that, I don't know the whole story. So that was one of my big things. Anything stand out for you, Rex, from 2023 that you learned that you were like, oh, well, this was different?
I think the biggest was similar to that, is that no one is spared and everyone is blessed. But as we've told our stories, people often told their stories, and a lot of times those stories were, they said before telling their story, well, our story's not as bad as yours. And then they tell these awful things that have happened to them. And I realized, man, you can't compare how terrible some situations in life are. There's just not a way to compare it. How do you get more terrible than something else? And so no one is spared, and it's still going on, and it's going to go on continually because we're having this human experience. And I have really admired how people have been willing to share, have found a safe place in our podcast community, and are willing to share their stories and their experiences. And I think it's helped a whole lot of us. It's helped each other. That was my biggest surprise, I think, in this whole experience.
Well, I remember when Rex approached me to co-write a book with him, and then we mentioned about doing a podcast. And at that point, Rex knows that he'd asked me to do a couple of interviews. I was like, I just don't want to do anything. And so, and I know there's a lot of people, optimists, same kind of boat. Like, well, I've been holding on to this, whatever it is inside me, for a long period of time. And I don't know if I feel comfortable letting that out. But since I did do that, and I decided to do the podcast and write the book and express my feelings and talk about things that I've been hiding or holding on to for a long time, because of all the different things that come with it, how hurt I am, how embarrassed I am, how do I handle, people, feeling sorry for me. There's a list of things go on when you open yourself up to talking about tragedies. And to actually go through and do that, I think opened the door for a lot of people, apparently optimists, that feel like, even on the Facebook group, even comments on YouTube, or just emailing us, people have mentioned all kinds of things that they have never, like, there was one comment where somebody said, I haven't talked about this in my whole life. And I'm, it's 45 years this has happened to me. And I'm now telling people about it because I'm getting it off my chest because I feel like this is a safe place. So I've learned that it's okay when you're ready, and that you may not be ready to talk about things that happened in your life, or maybe you've already gone through therapy and you're done with it and you don't need to share with anybody else, whatever your situation is. I learned in this past year that I've seen a lot of people open up and feel amazing after they do it. And Rex and I both have healed so much more, I think, by doing the book and the podcast than we could have ever done without it.
I agree with that. And I am so impressed that the healing that we've experienced ourselves and we've been witnessing, sharing with other people, it's so individual. We've talked about that. I'm more convinced now than I was when I first said it, that our internal guidance system needs to guide us in that healing. It is not the same for everyone. Not everyone needs the same components of healing or the same therapy or the same approach to it. Not everyone should talk about it. Some people should, and who knows who those people are. Your internal guidance is the only, I believe, reliable source. Listen to everybody, but follow your internal guidance on that healing path.
I love that. And we have talked about that a lot because I think it does help a lot of people when they understand, to follow their own and not what the normal is. Like I had told Rex one time, well, the normal is this. He goes, well, what do you think? What's your internal guidance telling you? And if maybe it doesn't match with normal or whatever it is, that's for you. But with that being said, as we look back at 2023, one of the things, we're going to talk about Denise and her story here in just a second, but we've had other guests on. We do want to thank Sarah for letting us do goat yoga. That was super fun, amazing. A lot of people had fun doing it. And so meeting people doing this podcast, that I feel like the people that we've had on it and that have met, have added something to my life. Like it has enriched my life with knowing them or having learned something from them. And one, is my friend Craig Shoemaker. We had him on. And one thing that struck me that when we had him on was he talked about his dad, was a cult leader and his wife left, some cult. And he mentioned about cult leaders. I was like, why do people fall into cults? Because we believe that Chad and Lori and Alex were part of a cult. Rex and I believe that. I don't know if anybody else does, but who knows if that's true or not. But that's kind of the path that we believe in, that they were on. And with that, Craig said something that struck me and said they look for people that are he said weak, but I think looking for somebody who, vulnerable. And I feel like when you have a good heart, like a lot of our optimists do, obviously when you read the comments, our optimists, their hearts are of gold, that I want to just point that out, because we do like to help people, or we're sensitive to other people's situations, or that we are easier targets for cult leaders and for cult people. So the one thing I just want to mention is when he said that, it struck a chord with me for our optimists. Just be on the lookout for, what we've all learned and experienced, so we don't none of us run into anything like that in 2024.
Okay, so I'm going to point out the obvious that someone else would point out if they had the microphone here. People are saying, well, what about you guys? You're leading this group of optimists. First of all, we had better not be leading this group of optimists, because the one message I said I have for all of you is to not follow us.
Right.
What we're doing.
Right. Unsubscribe. Go opposite.
Yeah, and I know in the world of social media, that's not the popular approach. You're looking for followers, and we appreciate people that have subscribed. We appreciate people that have signed up for the Facebook group, which, by the way, we have too. We don't lead that. We participate in it.
Right.
But we appreciate all of you that listen and that participate. And not everyone comments, but we appreciate the people that do comment. But we don't want anyone following us. The one piece of advice I feel is sound that I give is to follow your own internal guidance. Not me, not Adam, not any other person. Listen to whomever gets you information that you need in life and perspective in life, but follow your internal guidance, not someone else.
Which now leads me, I talked about Craig. I've talked about, who else did I talk about? But I want to talk about Denise for a second.
Okay, Denise. Charlene, of course, was one of our first guests on, and people are getting a lot about that and still commenting on it. So thank you also, Charlene. We love the posts, seeing your family, and we just feel there's a lot of good that came out of that.
A lot of good, Charlene. I'm so sorry. Yes, I do. Oh my gosh, that was another person that stepped forward and wanted to get out her story, and we appreciate that. And a lot of people did, be enriched by what she had said. Going back to recent interview with Denise in 2023 at the end of the year, part 1 and part 2. And Rex earlier mentioned, like, with our tragedy in our family, a lot of people's like, oh my gosh, I don't know how you guys could live through that. And I get that too, because it's terrible, and it's been awful to go through,
and still is.
And still is. But when you hear, with Denise's story and what happened to her, it puts things in perspective for me. And everybody has their own way of thinking what's worse. And I don't even think it matters what's worse. It's how to deal with what you're dealt with. And there's a few things that Denise had mentioned in the part 2 about her and her husband and the trust after everything she's been through. And so, Rex, I want you to kind of break that down a little bit, because I think we can all learn from what Denise learned and what she accomplished with her husband.
I love that she referenced that. And what I love most about it is what Denise said that she got out of what I said was not what I said. There is the case in point that I want all of you to hear and to understand. She heard from her internal guidance system while Adam and I were talking. That's what we want to happen. However it translates to you, comes across to you personally, that's listening to your internal guidance system. Nice of her to credit me. I don't get credit for that one.
Right?
And I hope I never get credit from any of you. I hope it's happening to each one of you. As we say something and you recognize it as, that applies to me, that applies to my life, start listening to that, because it'll tell you exactly how it applies to your life, which Adam and I don't know. And so the fact that we talked about relationships and she applied it to her, I hope everyone did the same thing. We talked about trust and how trust works. And it's stuff that's subconscious, but it's acting all the time. It's ongoing all the time. But we need to internalize it to ourselves. So I don't want to recreate it here. And I'd encourage you to go back to that episode talking about trust. And we'll do that. We'll be better about highlighting subjects and episodes, maybe get some type of a library system there so we can do that.
To reference back. So as we learn certain things in 2023, as we look forward to 2024, this year coming up, a lot of you have stressed to us, to Rex and I, how are you guys going to handle what's about to happen? And they're talking about Lori's trial that's coming up and Chad's trial that's coming up. Both of them are going to be, I'm sure, very difficult to hear and to process, even though we know, some things, we don't know other things. And reliving it is, I think, the part that is hard for me, is going back and thinking about all these emotions and all of these bad feelings I had and loneliness and all the other things that go along with that. How am I going to embrace what's about to happen to us? And I don't know the answer to that.
And none of us do. And let me suggest that I'm concerned about that, probably more than any other topic, because people have been very kind in saying, hey, you guys get ready. How are you going to prepare? And yeah, we don't know how to prepare for it because we don't know what it is. But in reading a book this week, there is something I would pass on to all of us that I'm internalizing from this book, and that is, it gave 3 categories while you're dealing with trauma, which is what we are all going to be dealing with, not just me and Adam. Tylee's murder, JJ's murder, Tammy, Charles, the attempted murder on Brandon, Brandon's family, the disillusion of Brandon and Melanie's family. That's all traumatic, and we all relate in different ways that brings up trauma in our life. We're all going to be dealing with some type of trauma, even if it's just hearing stuff that is beyond the pale and it offends our senses. There are some things you can do nothing about. What I was reading, this book I was reading said, don't try to do anything about them.
Don't do anything.
Right. There are some things you can do something about, but not everything about it. You can't control it. You can control your reaction to it. And the one area that you can control completely is your reaction to things. There's where you focus your attention, and you can think ahead of time, and I've been doing this very actively. When something comes up that I just can't handle again, like when we found out how the children died, I was unprepared. I didn't know how to handle it in the situation. Fortunately, I got some help and got through the situation, but you can plan now. What am I going to do? And look at all the resources you now have, meaning each other. You have the experience you have to date. You have a safe place to go. You've heard other people talk about what they've done. Some people have gone to therapy. Some people have not. Some people have found someone to talk to. Some people don't talk. They want to push it inside. And I'm not saying you have to talk about it. Listen to your internal guidance system. But we can do planning ahead of time, and those 3 categories help me to do that planning. I suggest that to others.
I love that, and I will think about that too as we approach these trials and new information that we're going to have to digest. the last thing on my list to talk about in this podcast is something when we were at Goat Yoga and Sarah's partner, April, Rex had talked to her beforehand and found out that she was in Lori's award at church. And so we briefly talked to her while we were out there. And it was not the right time and right place to go through everything. But I just wanted to get
it's on the live. Yeah, it's on the live so people can hear an idea of what we talked about.
Yeah, it was on Friday's live at Go Yoga. So she's in the middle of the podcast. We sit and just chat with her a little bit about her perspective on Lori. And, you know, as we were listening to her talk, it's something that Rex and I already know, but some other people have their own views of how Lori was and all that. But with that, you know, we believe that Lori was a good person all the way until she started going down a wrong path. How long did she go down this path? 2 years? 3 years? We don't know. We know that at some point during this leading on the right path and going a little bit this way and a little bit more this way, and the pathway just started turning this way, completely going opposite of the path that she started going down. And with that, little by little by little by little, this path turned into a complete disaster. And at one of the podcasts that Rex and I talked about was pride. And, you know, all of us like to be right. We want to be right. We want us to think, oh, I know what I'm doing. I don't need to hear anything. But the one thing that I want to mention with Lori going down, starting a smaller path where it's a little bit off of what the normal is, and then there's some more not so normal, then it keeps going and going and going. At what point can we recognize that we're going on the wrong path and be able to stop where we're walking, turn around, and try to go back to the original path that we were on? I don't know how to do that. I know that the one suggestion that I would give is if somebody says, hey, you're acting strange, or you're doing some things that are odd, or this isn't really like you, instead of being offended or being prideful, just step back and look at yourself and go, okay, let me think about this for a minute and just give it some thought. And that may save, if you are going down a wrong path, that may save you from continuing down a wrong path, and it may get you back to where you were before. I'm not saying it will, but I just feel like if all of us have stepped back sometimes, and if somebody says something to us, evaluate it, think about it, ask questions, do something instead of just brushing people off. And that's kind of like what happened with my family and me. It's just, they just went straight head forward without investigating or asking questions or thinking about things.
And I'll add a little bit to that too. Same subject. I agree completely with what you said. For me, what I've had to build into myself, I've talked a little bit on the air about ego and about how huge mine has been. And I'm not saying I'm any better, but for me, I have to constantly, when I do that evaluation, and I ask for input from other people whose opinion I value. And sometimes I get opinions from people I don't value, right? Sometimes it's from the internet. But I always ask myself, even those times when it's unsolicited input, that's the time I pay attention the most. And I say, am I hurting someone else? Will this path, will my actions, who's it going to hurt? I don't even say, will it hurt someone? Who's it going to hurt? And if you're talking about hurting someone else and you're saying, well, I think this is what I should do, I'm going to say my conscience is telling me to do this. Look harder, get other input from that. Lori at some point made statements that none of us paid attention to. We would now, in retrospect, about other people being affected. That's when you need to look at it. Or I found out that's when I need to look at it. How will it negatively impact people outside of me?
I love that. So with thinking about those things during this, this podcast, kind of rehashing things that happened in 2023, things that we've learned, things that are going to happen in 2024, what to be looking out for. And, I just feel like we're all in a good situation by we found each other
Yes.
as optimists, and we have this huge, group that we can get information from, that we can get love from, support from. And going into 2024, knowing that we have each other, I feel like we can really accomplish a lot of good in 2024. And Rex and I are both appreciative of everybody who's, put forward effort into this cause, and will continue to put effort into this cause. And, hopefully in 2024, we can grow and more people can benefit from it. Any other last words from you, Rex?
Well, just that, I think we will accomplish great things. Some of those great things will be simply protecting ourselves from stuff that's going on in our lives. That's a great thing to do, is just find some protection. Okay, so don't feel like we're saying that we want to accomplish things together like it's a great event in someone's life. We want to get through the tough times. Okay, and we want to have hope that we will get through the tough times. I think this optimist group is, what's the right word? A manifestation of that hope.
Yeah.
So, quick announcement before we close, Adam. What's going on? If this posts today or tomorrow, next weekend, not this coming weekend, next weekend, we're going to be with some of our optimists. Ian, you want to tell us?
Yep, we're going to be in Provo on Friday night at
I'm Sarah. So watch the announcement for I think Provo's about 6 in the evening.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Salt Lake will be on Saturday in the afternoon.
Yeah, like mid-afternoon, 3 in the afternoon in Salt Lake, close to downtown Salt Lake. So Lindsay has been working tirelessly on those details. So thank you for that, Lindsay. But we're hoping to see the people in those areas. I checked the weather. It looks just dang cold for me. And I know there are people saying, stop whining. You don't know what cold is. That's true. Yeah. Well, okay.
But we will be indoors, so that doesn't really affect us at that point.
We'll be somewhere that's heated.
Yes. So not this weekend, but the following weekend in Provo on Friday evening, and Salt Lake on Saturday afternoon. We'll have some books, some autographed books. We'd love to meet people, and we'll be doing a live there too. So yeah, be on the lookout for the different, I guess, announcements that we'll give you coming up. All right. Other than that, have a great time.
All right. Including the live for this weekend. Keep an eye out for that this Friday and Saturday. Okay. Thank you all for being a part of it.